Hi everybody, we hope you're well. We had an amazing time at our virtual kids camp this week. We learned all about who Jesus is and it was a blast. Today we're gonna have these kids in junior highs involved. It's gonna be great. So first off, we're gonna have these kids lead you in some music. We're gonna do the same songs we did at camp this week, and we hope you get up off your couches and do the actions with us.
He's the chosen one, he's the champion, the winner for all time. With me to the end, Jesus is my friend, he's always by my side. Anything I face, he will be my strength. I'm his and he is mine. I'm forever free, nothing stopping me, because he gave his life. Shout it out. In me resurrected, and I'm still laying down there in that grave. Now I'm changed, I'm not the same, no, no. And now I'm moving in your direction, and I feel good about that. It makes me wanna jump up, spin around, get up, get down. Don't you know I'm doing that every day? Jump up, spin around, get up, get down. Oh yeah, it makes me wanna jump up, spin around, get up, get down. Don't you know I'm doing that every day? Jump up, spin around, get up, get down. Oh yeah, he'll never change, he stays the same. So get on moving in God's direction, and you'll feel good about that.
Hey everybody, I'm Noah,
And I'm Tyrone.
and we've had a great week this week at our virtual kids camp.
One thing we've done every day this week with the kids has given them 3 things they got to do.
So we're gonna give them to all of you, no matter how old you are.
So the first thing you got to do is get pumped.
That's right, we know it's Sunday church online, but we still want you to be pumped with us.
So let's say get pumped on the count of 3.
1,
1, 2, 3, get pumped.
So the second thing you gotta do is listen well.
That's right, we want everyone to listen to the teachings and participate in the songs today. And the third and final thing you got to do today is have fun.
We want you guys to have a blast today. Let's say have fun on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3,
Have fun. Isn't so much fun hanging out with the kids this week?
Back to you, Sonia.
Every day this week, we've been working through a memory verse. Ava's going to join us now to bring us through that today.
Hi, my name is Ava, and for this week I've been leading the memory verse for kids camp. We thought that it would be fun to do this verse with everybody in the church. So here's how it goes. I'm going to read the memory verse on my own, then you're going to repeat after me, then we're all going to say it together. So let me read it here for everybody. But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing in him you will have life. John 20:31. Let me read it one more time. But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing in him you will have life. John 20:31. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to read it and you're going to repeat each line after me. Here we go. But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing in him, you will have life. John 20:31. I want you to repeat with me one last time, and I want to hear all of the parents sing it very loud. But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing in him, you have life. John 20:31. That was pretty good. Now let's all say it together. But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing in him you will have life. John 20:31. We've had an amazing week. Thanks for doing the memory verse with me.
It has been a really amazing week, and it's been even more amazing seeing our junior highs and our kids being involved in it. Thank you to all the parents and all the kids that participated. We're so grateful for what God has done this week. We're going to jump into our final week of our summer series, Faith for Exiles. I'll hand it over to you guys.
What's up, everybody? It is so great to have you guys with us. And thanks for tuning in, joining us in this very obviously unique season that's been way longer than we ever thought. First off, hey, to all those kids and to Sonia and the whole team that led Kids Camp this week and their emceeing, and I know this morning already, today we've already gone through the memory verse, and Ty and Noah have led us through some awesome stuff as well. So well done to those guys. I'm super, not just as a dad, but as a pastor guy over a community, really proud of those guys for all the hard work, and it's pretty cool to see like 12, 13, 14-year-olds leading the way in our church. So well done to you guys. And here we are. We're kind of heading towards the end of summer. I know we still have a few weeks left, and I don't even know if you know this because of COVID. We actually have an extra week of summer this week, which is pretty cool. So Labor Day's a little later. Football hopefully is on the horizon if all goes well. But as you know, we've been in this series walking through a book called Faith for Exiles and just looking at the key themes and just really wrestling through faith in our moment. And it's been, I think, a great time. We had a couple introduction weeks, and now we've taken 5 weeks just to go through each of the principles of things that healthy, resilient disciples are actually practicing. And if you didn't tune in midweek, you really missed out. You can actually go back, and I would really encourage you to do so, because these guys here around the table, we've just had some time together, and I'm going to be honest, we ate dinner together. It was fantastic. I think we're okay to say that. And we're socially distancing as best as we can. But these guys have helped in an awesome conversation called the After Show, where we've just taken each day, each teaching from Sunday, and just broken it down into kind of some better discussion. We've had lots of fun between Kendra's plant and arguments about audiobooks. What else? I'm trying to think. Yeah. So like
sleepwalking.
Sleepwalking is a thing. So if you missed any of those things, we just basically have bantered for the last number of weeks midweek. And what I thought to end kind of our week of kids camp, which we've been in, and to end this series, we would just have, I would love for these guys just to take some time. We're just going to wrestle through and give you a little snapshot of what we kind of wrestled through throughout the series and just kind of bring it to an end. So one of the things we wanted to do is get you guys the book in hand. If you haven't had a chance to read it, that's okay. But we do encourage you to engage this stuff. With all that said, welcome, guys. Welcome. I often joke that discipleship is often back deck moments, and here we are. It's quiet enough today, wherever you're watching, on the back deck, and so it's so good to have you guys here. Everybody doing okay? You guys doing all right?
Yeah, good.
Okay. Have we settled the audio? Have we settled the audiobook thing? Like, is audio listening to an audiobook, is that now considered? We all ganged up on Kendra.
Yeah. I think you convinced me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, because of the sense of accomplishment, I think I would feel if I finished an audiobook would be the same as if I finished a book.
Exactly.
So if anything, we have made some progress, so we've brainwashed a few people. It's good.
We don't have Phil here today, unfortunately.
Yeah. We've got some this week. We got some other, oh yeah? You'll have to bring us updates.
I noticed it.
You know what Phil needs? Phil, by the way, is a plant that was growing behind Kendra as we did these videos
Is he
each
hitting
week.
the ground?
No, but he's getting very close.
Nice.
Yeah.
Anyways, there's a plant. It's been growing. It's great. Phil needs its own Instagram account, is what I think.
Very boring.
So, what do you think? What maybe just would love to hear you guys. What stood out? Maybe let's start with this actually. What in amongst all of our first ever pandemic COVID summer? I think there's so much sometimes bad news. What has been good about this summer that maybe is different than other summers? Because I think this is actually part of life in God, learning in these moments to navigate these interesting times. Anybody learn anything? You feel like this stood out as something that's actually positive in and amongst things that haven't been so great?
We've had some good weather. I must say, this has been a great summer. It started nice and early as well, and kind of I feel like just when everybody needed it, the sun came out. And so I think in that way, I've been grateful for the sunshine and just be able to get out after so many months in the house. Yeah. So that's one good thing I think about this summer, that it's been a good summer, a warm one. Yeah.
Just following up to that, I think if the pandemic had hit a few months earlier, it would have been a lot rougher.
For sure.
So I think it came at the right time because it was getting warmer. People could get outside, walk, things like that. So I'd agree. Weather definitely helped.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. And anybody, you feel like you slowed down?
I think for me, this is really weird. It's been a long time.
Friends.
I think for me, when they let us see family and friends, that was a big game changer. I think that we schedule when we're going to see our family, we have to make sure that we go, whether this week or next week or something like that. And it was we were so excited. And then when we got to see our friends, it was kind of I don't know.
Like a reunion.
Yeah, but you're looking forward to it. You make a point of it, and it's not just like something to check off your list. Like, we have to have lunch with my parents, or we have to go check in on your parents. It was kind of like, we want to do this. We can't wait to do this. So it was,
Cool.
Yeah.
It probably has made some of us feel like in those little moments that you take for granted now are important again. The forced slowdown has been just interesting for everybody, depending on whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, and how we live in it a very like I toe the line. Like at the end of the day, I'm more introverted, but the one thing I've noticed is we live in an extroverted world. So it's been interesting for those that are more on the extroverted side of things, how that rolls. Yeah.
Okay, one more thing.
Yeah.
Small talk with your colleagues at work was something that I always was kind of like,
Me too.
And now don't you love it? Like I messaged my colleague, I was like, we're working on the backyard, and just catching her up. And I'm just like, hate it. Yeah, I'm like, let me do my work. And now I'm just like, what are you guys doing? How are you kids?
Totally. You're like, somebody just please talk to me.
Oh my gosh,
somebody other than him.
So funny. So funny. Well, this is. I just want to read the end of the Sermon on the Mount. This is what our whole church community is based off of. Jesus says this: "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous. There's the word of the day. Wolves. You will know them by their fruits." And Jesus goes on, verse 21, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven will enter." And then he goes on, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine," so all the words that he's spoken in the Sermon on the Mount, "may be compared to a wise man who built his house on the rock, and the rain fell and the floods came against the house, and yet it did not fall because it was built on the rock, for it had been founded on the rock." And verse 26, "Everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and slammed against that house and it fell. And great was its fall." And just the idea for us has always been, discipleship is this formation, this way of life. We're drawn into the kingdom of God. We now practice, and that's actually what makes us wise. What do you take away from, the introduction with the Canadian stats? Obviously, we're in an interesting moment, but as well, these 5 kind of principles, I call them principles, I guess it's more in the book, practices that are proven in disciples' lives. What do you think? What stood out? Is there any one in particular? I think, there's obviously 5 that we've looked at the last number of weeks, from calling and vocation to intimacy with Jesus to relationships. Has anything stood out to you as kind of paramount, or something that you think is essential in following Jesus, especially in our time?
I think the big one, for this week was reading kind of the 5th practice about being countercultural.
Yeah.
Especially in this day and age now, I think everybody's looking for some sort of an answer, and I think we just have a massive opportunity to have an answer, or at least share that in proper ways. Whether or not it's online, whether like I said, having an online presence. I just think it was a great opportunity right now to live counterculturally.
Cool. Yeah, I agree. I think maybe that's something that's not talked a lot about enough too. We just kind of assume, and then for some people, like 20 or 30 years goes by, and you realize the world we live in has changed, and how are we going to adapt? The big thing right now through COVID, the big word was pivot. I think it's such a funny word. It's fun. As the basketball coaches are like, there's a word. But I don't think it's just COVID. I think one of the things that we've learned, and maybe from the book we've developed this more in our conversation, is just learning how to live well in the different culture in which we're in, which is hard. It's we've been honest to say, like, that's actually the harder option for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other big themes, thoughts you guys have thought through, and stuff that stands out? No pressure.
It's a little thing,
I
think, but it is kind of a game changer for me. Is the little fact about surrounding yourself, like immersing yourself in some of Christian culture.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe immersion isn't the best use of terminology there, but being selective and actually actively taking in Christian teaching and just even Christian influencers and stuff like that, I am very selective about what I read that is Christian, and so I tend to read less, and I don't listen to a lot of Christian podcasts or anything. But the thing is, like, you do sort of become what you listen to and what you take in, and so I want to be a little bit more intentional about how I intake Christian culture.
Yeah.
In a good way, in a way that benefits my own growth.
For sure.
Does that make sense?
So totally. Totally. Like, it's probably a little bit to the balance of, like, you don't want, like, some, because we often call it the subculture, and we poke fun at it. So I think, actually, that's actually maybe one of the things that I've leaned into from this. Like, there's certain things I've thought through as, like, a pastor, church leader. But that, maybe that's probably actually the biggest thing for me has been, like, how do you create, because the church in this week, if you were, so last week's teaching, we talked about this a little bit, creating a counterculture. How do you do that without maybe creating a subculture, And I know, 20 years from now, our kids, like, could sit here and, be doing a podcast or whatever, floating on hoverboards or whatever they're doing as far as media and doing their thing and talk about, the cultures that they grow up and poke fun. I'm actually okay with that, but I'm wrestling through, like, the countercultural way of the church, but without creating, like, this weird kind of subculture. And there's not necessarily an answer to that, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough because, like, I don't actually want to be fully immersed in Christian culture.
Right.
That sounds really boring and awful.
Right.
And it can become people's whole lives, I guess. But, like, if I'm not taking my own growth and learning actively, seriously, whatever, then it doesn't just happen on its own.
Right.
Is the thing maybe that most concerns me, is that if I'm not actively, like, in the Bible or talking about it or reading about it or something, like, in some sort of intake, then my growth doesn't necessarily happen.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be constant, like, all the time.
Yeah.
But just to be watchful, maybe.
Yeah.
Mindful of
But
that.
I think that's that's the hard thing, because we're not attending church the same way we were, right? Because we have to be more intentional about.
That's a good point.
About doing that, because you don't have that, like, weekly standing date where you're gonna intake something,
And, like, stop and think about it.
Now you have to find it, or actually
Yeah.
view it.
Yeah, some great points being made. So I agree with Kendra in terms of, there's a lot of material out there that's available for just Christianity, but a lot of it's boring, a lot of it's extreme, a lot of it's, Christianity is an interesting thing because it's quite a pendulum. Right, you can have the very extreme, and you can have sort of a liberal wing as well of Christianity. So, and then I think the book talks about being intentional and about needing, I think, 500 and something hours a year of, like, intake. I don't think I come nearly close to consuming that, but I think the point is to be intentional. But at the same time, I look at my own kids, for instance, right? Like, I look at their growth as well. I'm at a certain point where I think I'm a mature Christian, although I still need to intake the word and to sort of still grow. I think about mentorship, which is something that the book talks about. I think about my young teenager who's 14 years old, my 10-year-old coming up, and I think about their spiritual well-being and the responsibility I have to make sure that that they're exposed to Scripture and that they grow up to be good young men and young men full of faith, but also just the people that are entrusted to me in whether it be in a community, or in terms of mentorship. So, yeah, I'd say those are the things that stood out to me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the intergenerational stuff. Going back to what you were talking about, Kendra, it's interesting with the whole subculture kind of discussion, like, as you say, I forget exactly what your words were, but, like...
Me too.
Yeah, but kind of with, like, I don't want to be completely immersed in it. It's always interesting because one of the shifts I think we need to have is this is God's world. right? So like there is a Christian counterculture, but I think that's maybe where we've lost a little bit. Like we're already losing when we come from a posture that we're trying to create something outside of this world. And this is where like the theology guy kind of tipped his hat and goes like, we've talked a lot about God not throwing this world out when it comes to work, mentorship, vocation, that the telos, like the world is going, like as Christians, fundamental to our theology is the world is going somewhere, and that's to complete renewal. Too bad we didn't have time, because some people have been asking, even my own kids, like, what do you think heaven is like? Legit, I don't have scripture and verse for this. This could be totally out of place, but I don't care. I'm on my back deck, so it's all good. But I think, like, legit, the world we will live in forever is a replica of this one. I believe London, I believe I will be a resident here forever in a completely renewed world, but that's for another day.
New podcast series.
New podcast series.
Do one on heaven, do one on hell.
Yeah, that's right. I always say to people, the people be like, oh, I don't like the city. I don't like that. And what I always say to them,
be here forever.
what I always say to them, you don't like it because of the sin and injustice, but imagine once all that's flipped back on its head and Jesus kind of comes in and sets up shop. It's going to be amazing. So all of this has, like, there are theological components, but I think, we can come from a posture of losing if we don't understand that this is God's world. It's just that the fine line of right now as the counterculture, the content, the things that we bring into our lives, the things that form us. I mean, we've been talking about this forever is really important.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I kind of think about as well is the saying, we're in this world, but we're not of this world. It's, something as, growing up in an evangelical environment, that's kind of what you hear all the time, and how you're taught to kind of form as well your way of thinking, that we're in this world, but we're not of this world. So ensure you're separating yourself, and you ensure you're clearly delineating yourself from the world itself. At the same time, I feel like as, kind of maturing as a Christian as well, like it's not that simple. It's not that simple as, oh, you're in the world, but you're not of this world. So ensure that in everything you do, you're separate, or you're, kind of doing things completely different. I found you find your middle ground almost, of where you are. And I think this is kind of what you're alluding to as well, Kendra, is that, we find our space, that we are in the world, but we still know who we are, called by Christ, and living a life that is, fully in Him, but yet we're still functioning almost, right? Because I think that's what it kind of comes down to. It's almost like survival mode, because I feel like, some of the things that I was maybe taught previously growing up is like, it would make me so separate that I would not be able to almost function in the world if I didn't at least try to adapt, in certain ways, and try to almost compromise and understand the world's culture too, and meet them halfway, right? I feel like sometimes, as Christians, unintentionally, we may put the world off of us by trying to be so separate from it, and not meeting them almost halfway so that we can share Christ with them, right? And so I think that's kind of the struggle that I have in finding that in-between balance of being in the world, but not of the world at the same time as well. I'm called to disciple, and so, finding that space to do all of that in.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I even, like you mentioned her, I was reading the chapter and just thinking, like, countercultural just sounds like such a bad word. Like, to me, when you think of counter, you think of, I mean, it would be opposite. Like, she made the example of like, oh, well, it's counterclockwise. It just means the other way. But I think we've taken that word and been more so anti-cultural, whereas where there's things where, we need to be, separate, but to the point where, like we used the word earlier about sheltering, and whether or not we want to get down the conversation about Christian schools and all those types of things, where it's a matter of keeping us separate and trying to get people to come with us to that area, whereas we're called to be out in the world, and I think it's good to I think you become wise by getting Christian literature or different things in you, but also learning the opposite. We can't be afraid to learn of other things that are out there, and I think that just helps us grow in our walk. And just little things. Like, I even remember when I was in youth and leading and stuff, just all the kids were big into, like hip hop and rap music, and just use, different examples of people they're listening to, like whether or not it was Jay-Z, 50 Cent, or different things like that at the time. And it was like, cool, man, like they're really good artists, but also like there's Lecrae, there's different things, and you should listen to that. And then they were like, yeah, you know what, there's really, without being like, no, you can't listen to this.
Yeah.
It was just more so as in like, there's other options out there. And yeah, I don't know, I just think we need to be less anti, and I don't know, just, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think as well as we've gotten, like, I've got older kids. I have a 14-year-old at home, right? And we were just talking about music just before this conversation as well. And that's sort of the part where I've had to kind of be flexible, because I can't tell him, you cannot listen to this. I will take away your phone if I see this song on your phone. Like, that's just not a reality of how I really want to raise them. I want him to also be able to kind of make the right decisions and make the right choices. And so, you know, whereas I actually grew up that way, right?
It's like 30s and 90s.
Like, hard, like, you do not, oh my goodness, R. Kelly. Holy, okay, I don't blame my mom now. I totally don't blame my mom now for not letting me. But yeah, it's you know, kind of finding that balance. And I think, like I said, you know, as I've become a parent of older kids, I feel like I'm you know, I wouldn't call it compromising. I don't know if we can find another word. Can we find another word for what it is we do? But
well, I think you're educating too your kids on making decisions, not just saying no. Like, why do we listen to this?
Right.
Why should we not listen? Like, I just think, I think
Yeah.
the hard no is what screwed a lot of people. Or screwed up a lot of people.
Exactly.
Not learning, just being told no.
Yeah.
I like that term, educating. Yeah.
What do you guys, so let's shift a little bit. This is so good. And again, this is now like a Sunday gathering for us. If you've missed, honestly, any of this is what we've done midweek for the last 6 or 7 weeks. It's been on Zoom, but we just sat around and wrestled through this stuff. And I just think, honestly, this is the best place and space, is just wrestling through. This is what we want. The hope with this was almost like a small group, but online, so that people could listen in. And I think one of the things, we have some amazing communities meeting. One of the things that's beautiful about it is it feels like this, which is so good. But, you know, so you shift kind of the idea of the church. What do you think this says for the church? Like, some of what we're learning. I'll kind of preface with this. It's interesting. I have had, you know, I grew up in the same church. My parents are amazing and led church. I think one of the things starting and planting a church is like, okay, it's going to grow, it's going to get big, we're going to do it, it's going to be, you know, I've very much grown up in a world where, you know, you have faith, and faith sees that grow, and something, typically people view something as growing as successful. I'm a Hillsong kid. I know way back in the early 2000s, I went to Hillsong. It was actually a year and a bit that radically changed my life. I loved it so much. So much life change from that. But it's interesting as I continue to think through what we're wrestling through about real discipleship. Not that my mind has changed on everything, but it's just interesting now looking at how it really takes integrated, tight-knit communities, I think, in the future to really make disciples. It's different than it was in the 90s and the early 2000s as things shift and change in our own culture. And it's not necessarily about big or small, but it's funny how, some of the things as I look at the church, can you actually get things accomplished with a large amount of people? And that's not to push back again on the big church, it's just I'm starting to see now, like, some of the things that this perpetuates as far as discipleship. I'm beginning to wonder, like, how can you really do this with hundreds and even thousands of people? Maybe that's for another time. What do you think? Like in the church, as far as like being a tight-knit community and expressing some of these things? I don't mean as much as far as like size of church, but like, what do you think the implications are for the church moving forward? And even as we talk about COVID, it's going to be a different day down the road when things, quote unquote, get back to normal. What do you think it looks? Do you think it's, what do you think it looks like? Is it going to be more integrated? Are things going to be seen as things going to be seen maybe not as successful? Maybe as now people's hearts and minds turn to go, you know what? Maybe the integration of church and homes, and I'm not saying to go to a home church movement, but I just mean like the real life on life stuff that is often missed as churches get bigger. Do you think that? What do you think? What do you think about that? I just wanted to share. My heart is slowly changing, and it's not about size. It's more about like when we talk about discipleship and following Jesus. How can this be done? Especially for the future after COVID, where everybody's gonna be afraid to be around each other too, right?
I think community is going to be crucial going forward, even more crucial than it's ever been, for many different reasons. First one maybe being that coincidentally, the name of the book is Faith for Exiles.
Yeah.
And when you think about the word exile, it means being almost from a place but sent away, or being apart. That's my own definition. I just made that up.
No, yeah.
I think that's what it means. But it means being separate, or not being part of something. So, not being part of the world, right? Not being, like I think you were talking about, being in the world but not being of it. So, I think because of that, because we'll be different, because we're different, because I think Christianity is becoming sort of a scarce, we're becoming a scarce species, if you will, and because of it, I think we need to be tight.
Yeah,
we need to stick together. We need to support each other, and I love the fact that we can sort of have a place where our kids can go and learn. Where if a family has a newborn in the house, then we can support that family. We can drop meals.
Three COVID babies, by the way.
3 COVID babies.
Or 4,
right?
3 as of today, I think.
What other type of community does that? And I think that's special that we can support families in time of need like that. Likewise, if you have different kinds of life events, whether good or bad, I think the church community can step in and help. That only happens through community, I think. So
I think we used to say, or it used to be said that that in real life you can spot a fake a mile away, right? And that's like a challenge for Christians, I think, is to be really, we like to stay authentic.
Yeah.
Right? But during COVID, it's really easy to hide behind a brand and an Instagram account, and people can just sort of like the look or the style of your community of believers. But I think that we've also seen during COVID that we're really looking for the helpers. And we're really, everybody's looking for the boots on the ground. Who's helping who inside the church and outside the church.
Right.
And we, I think, moving forward, have more and more of an opportunity to be the authentic, real people who know our neighbors. And,
to be present.
Take time, have a posture where we can be disrupted by the people around us and their needs, right?
Yes.
I love that. I think
posture of disruptability is a Steve.
Wow.
that whole term.
You can be disruptive.
I did not make that out. But
I like that.
I think true to your question, you hold it, is the marker of success is different. You're not looking at crowds anymore, right? So if it's a matter of how big is your church, that doesn't. It still matters, but it's not the one thing people are looking at.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I just think it's interesting just with what restrictions will be. We don't know that yet down the road, and even it's just interesting even for what we feel in our hearts is being constructive. I think that one thing COVID will do is it'll push us back to. I think it is pushing us back to. Better markers for that, and what Kendra just said, I think we're all in agreement with that, and I do think it's interesting as you look through this whole season. There's been a drawback to the things that actually really matter, and it's interesting just the markers of success, how that's changing, at least in our posture, in our mind. And again, it's not necessarily about big and small. It's just how we approach. For example, anyway, I know of a church was planted or started a bunch of years ago, and had massive vision, and we're posting pictures of stadiums filled, this was going to be the church, and it's right now maybe a church of 70 or 80 people, and just knowing some of the agony that the leaders have felt through that. And yet I think the posture maybe should be, man, like, love those 70 or 80 people, take joy in that. And I think that's going to be more of a thing after this whole thing is said and done. Again, it's not about big and small, but it's been excruciating to watch the agony in them, thinking, well, we've seen this, and we've come from even a culture of this, so we're going to fill buildings, and the internal, like, dying to that. I guess the posture, it just is, it's interesting, just the change of posture to say, whoa, like, can we even when it comes to discipleship, what can we actually accomplish in an integrated community like that is important. Maybe one last thing. This has been so good. And again, man, if you're just watching today, thanks for watching. I just really appreciate it. Just all that God's doing in our community. It's really cool to again, have people who are, a part of the community, aren't paid to be here, just, sharing, and it's so good for us. You're like, I'm not paid to be here. Sorry, there's no check in the mail, but you get whatever. You got take the cookies. You got the cookies.
We paid you with dinner.
Yeah. Digital Babylon. This whole thing was predicated on Digital Babylon. What do you think for the church? I know we've kind of laid the ground for this, but at 6 or 7 or 8 weeks later now, Digital Babylon. How do you think we live in Digital Babylon faithfully now that we've talked the way we have the last bunch of weeks? Anything come to mind, just kind of as the concluding thoughts of what we've been wrestling through?
I hope, just the whole digital aspect, I hope with this, the church has been less afraid to, see the potential that they have.
Yeah.
And the idea of, they can have an online presence. It doesn't have to be just in a building.
Yeah.
It can be outwards of that. And I hope, I hope some pastors and some people, some churches have just been surprised at what they've been able to do and what they can do, and they just continue to go on with that.
Yeah.
Because I think we should be more of a presence everywhere, as opposed to just being, okay, well, you need to go here to this building and this is where the presence is. I think we just have an ability to be online, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, all that kind of different thing. And I just hope that once things start to slowly go back to normal, we don't shy away from that.
Sure.
And it's just you can integrate a little bit of both, but still be an online part. Because I feel like, too, I think some churches will start to grow smaller, and not necessarily in believers going smaller, but I just think people with comfortability of going into actual buildings will be far less. So I just, I hope the church just continues to embrace, what they've been able to do during these times.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think as well, like, I really reiterate what Kevin just said as well, is that what I hope is that people kind of really start to concentrate more on the heart of God and what His will and plan and purpose is in all of this, rather than concentrating on what we want the plan and purpose to be. Because I think sometimes we can kind of let that get in the way, and then we see challenges and barriers and circumstances that don't allow us to have church the way we want it to be, or have church the way we think it should be. But instead of embracing it and saying, you know what, God is still God. Yeah. He's still sovereign. Yeah. Jesus is still King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And no matter what, we know He's got this. I hope that that's kind of the faith building that happened during this time, so that when we go back, no matter what church looks like, that we will be able to continue in faith, and that we will continue to just do what He's called us to do, kind of, back to the basics almost, and just trust in that. And whatever, whatever this world kind of becomes, we know, who has this world in their hands, and just trusting in that and having faith in that, because I think sometimes the uncertainty can be so scary that we and we're measuring things, like you talked about, in successes of how many people's in the pews, or how big is our choirs, or can we have our choirs and things like that. I think we get so overwhelmed with those kinds of things, and you have to ask yourself, what is the heart of God? Can we go Can we go back to the heart of worship? Let me go back to
Sure. Yeah.
you know,
You want the
you know, yeah, but you know that song just rings so true right now in this time. You know, let's get back to the heart of worship when it's about God. It's not about me. It's not about how many people are in my pews. It's who am I serving? Am I being the hands and feet of God? Am I being the eyes and ears of Jesus? That's what it's all about. You know.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, so good. Well, this has been really good. I mean, just to drill down on these things, these practices are important. And I want to say thank you to you guys for taking time, especially in the summer. We have never really ramped up like we have in the summer. Part of that is because we're not obviously gathered on Sundays together. So we really appreciate this. Maybe we'll get an opportunity to do this again. I know we've talked like a book club maybe over the summers. We'll see what next summer. Yeah, audio book club. Audio book club. I love it. We want to say thank you to our church community, anybody that's listening and watching. We also know the podcast community that listens. We're just thankful for you guys as well. So we hope this has been beneficial to you guys. Just a couple things. Again, we just finished a great week of kids camp. We're so thankful to the team and everybody that was involved with that. I know I've said that. Next Sunday actually is going to be a time where for the first time in a number of months, we're actually going to be together. For those that feel comfortable and choose to do so, we're going to be together. Next Sunday, we're going to be at Springbank Park, right near the pavilion. We will be socially distanced. We will follow protocols, but we're calling it a socially distanced town hall. And so next Sunday morning at 10:30, if you want to join us at Springbank Park. Bring a blanket or a chair, come along. It's not going to be long, but we'll bring you up to speed. The team would love to bring everybody up to speed with just a few things we're looking ahead to. There is also, if you don't feel comfortable with that, that's totally cool. There is a Zoom option at 6 p.m. You'll have exactly the same thing, but in the evening on Zoom. Join us at 6 p.m. You can go to the website. You can sign up. We'd love for you to let us know that you're coming to one of those options, and we really appreciate it, just as a church community, a leadership community, if you would join us for that, just because we'd love to bring you up to speed and even hear from you and answer any questions as we kind of look ahead. We're not in a rush, but we're just kind of slowly looking ahead to the future as every community, not just churches, everybody is, but we'd love to have you join us. So 10:30 next Sunday, that'd be great. We love you. I just pray, when we pray, grace and peace on you for watching, and we pray you have an amazing week. See you soon.